Have you ever seen an interesting picture and wondered what the aesthetic of it was? Art is so beautiful and it comes in so many different ways and aesthetics. My whole YouTube come up low-key started with those Weirdcore and Liminal space videos. The internet is overflowing with strange, dreamy aesthetics. Some cute, some creepy, and some that feel like a fever dream that you forgot until now. From the soft serenity of Cottagecore to the uncanny glitches of Weirdcore and even the mysterious corners of lost media edits and Dreamcore edits made by users with usernames like toothfleshangel_07. Today we're diving into the internet aesthetics iceberg. And really quick, be sure to subscribe to the channel for more videos, follow my Instagram for cool pictures and stuff, and join my Discord to hang out with me and my mods. And they're all awesome, I pay them in Reddit gold, obviously. Grab your headphones, light a candle, make your Kool-Aid pentagram, and pray to Satan as we sink into the beautifully bizarre world of internet aesthetics. Wholesome meme. Wholesome memes are essentially memes that spread positivity, love, or happiness. They serve as comfort memes, typically beginning with cute or humorous images that are edited with numerous hearts, sparkles, and uplifting quotes. The main goal of these memes is to create something that makes viewers smile or feel a sense of warmth and comfort. Typical images associated with this meme style include beloved characters from games or cartoons, such as Kirby, Kermit the Frog, and characters from the We Bare Bears. Anime characters, well-known internet animals like Doge, cute pets, and popular YouTubers and celebrities, especially K-pop idols, also frequently appear. Sometimes memes originally depicting gloomier or pessimistic themes are transformed into something more heartwarming and relatable. Wholesome memes gained significant popularity around 2018 to 2019, particularly through Instagram and Musical.ly edits. And a lot of them feature the song Mine by Bazzi, some shit like that. Visual elements in wholesome memes usually include charming or humorous original pictures, occasionally converting darker themed images into uplifting ones. Emojis are very important in this aesthetic, with hearts of various colors and sparkles and other emojis that convey warmth and joy. Sigma. You would understand this aesthetic perfectly if you've ever watched any of my videos, because guess what? Poi is a Sigma. Sigma is an internet meme and character trope that blew up in the late 2010s, playing off the whole alpha beta male concept that's been floating around online forever. Basically, Sigma males are portrayed as super independent lone wolves who are mysterious, powerful, wealthy, and obsessed with self-improvement and success. The vibe is all about being cool, detached, and kind of edgy. The aesthetic mostly takes inspiration from niche movies and shows like American Psycho, Joker, Better Call Saul, The Batman, and The Wolf of Wall Street, idolizing characters who are charismatic yet seriously problematic or villainous. It overlaps heavily with like hustle culture, pushing this idea that you always have to be grinding, making money, and isolating yourself to reach your peak potential, often ignoring mental health or social relationships. Visually, Sigma memes lean heavily into dark, moody aesthetics with limited color schemes. Think of blacks, whites, grays, and dark reds with high contrast. You'll typically see corporate environments, cityscapes, flashy cars, and suits, a nod back to American Psycho's satirical look at 80s corporate culture. Sigma memes really took off in the early 2020s, largely driven by gym culture trends on TikTok and Instagram, and the rise of drift funk and hardstyle music. Influencers like Andrew Tate, Elon Musk, and fictional figures like Patrick Bateman became major symbols within this trend. That said, the Sigma aesthetic has faced tons of backlash for its obvious problematic elements. Critics start to highlight its ties to incel communities, misogyny, toxic masculinity, and unrealistic expectations based on fictional and sometimes criminal role models. There's also a troubling trend of glamorizing serial killers and negative portrayals of LGBTQ people. But then thankfully, by late 2023, Sigma memes became mostly like ironic, with younger users mocking earlier followers. Memes like sticking out your gyat for the Rizzler and phrases like what the Sigma turned the whole concept into a joke for Gen Z and Gen Alpha. Which, personally, me, Poi, if you walk up to me and say what the Sigma to me, I'm gonna laugh. I don't know if I can get doxxed for this, but I made my senior quote, what the Sigma. That's real Poi lore, guys. Liminal spaces. I love liminal spaces. Go back to my channel start, my first 3 videos all about liminal spaces. I have so much passion for these, guys, you don't even understand. Liminal space aesthetics are all about capturing those strangely familiar yet unsettling transitional places, usually empty spaces that we typically expect to see bustling with people. Think empty malls early in the morning, abandoned parking lots, or school hallways during summer break. It's the kind of imagery that gives you a nostalgic, eerie, almost dreamy vibe, mostly due to their characteristic absence of human life. Elements like fluorescent lighting, late 20th century decor, linoleum flooring, and generic architecture enhance the sense of familiarity mixed with unease. The aesthetic really took off on the internet back in May 2019 thanks to a thread on 4chan's paranormal board. But films like Stanley Kubrick's The Shining laid the groundwork for the liminal vibe way earlier. The best known example online, though, is probably The Backrooms, which was a creepy internet urban legend about endlessly repeating hallways that became a massive inspiration for tons of liminal-themed video games and YouTube discussions. The core of liminal space aesthetics lies in transitional areas, places you pass through without really noticing, like stairwells, waiting rooms, parking garages, and hallways. Usually, these spaces feel completely different when they're empty. They're supposed to be alive with people, so the emptiness creates an unsettling, surreal atmosphere. Over time, though, the aesthetic has expanded beyond purely transitional places to include locations that just feel dreamlike or uncanny, tapping heavily into nostalgia and collective memory across generations like X, Millennials, and Gen Z. Common settings now include abandoned malls, playgrounds, and roadside attractions. Portal and Portal 2 deserve a huge shout out in this aesthetic. These games totally nail that unsettling, surreal, and isolated atmosphere perfectly. Wandering through Aperture Science's sterile, maze-like chambers gives players an intense liminal feeling. You're almost constantly passing through empty test rooms and hallways that feel endlessly repetitive and strangely familiar. The clinical lighting and minimalist architecture in these games brilliantly encapsulate the eerie, nostalgic core of the liminal space vibe, making them honestly to me essential examples of this aesthetic. Which, I mean, I guess I'm sure you guys couldn't tell how much I love Portal and Portal 2 because it's like I never have that for the background of my videos. Visuals in liminal space aesthetics rely heavily on mood lighting, peculiar architectural choices, and occasionally glitchy or vaporwave style edits to heighten the unsettling effect. Gaming visuals, especially older or abandoned virtual worlds like empty Gmod, which is my favorite, or early Call of Duty maps, have also become key examples of liminal imagery. Creators like Your Local Breadman have popularized edits that evoke vintage horror or RPG game visuals. Frutiger Eco. Frutiger Eco is basically a spin-off from the popular Frutiger Aero aesthetic, blending futuristic vibes with eco-friendly themes and sustainable living. It blew up mainly around the mid-2000s to early 2010s when climate change became a big conversation point. Brands hopped on this trend to showcase a bright, hopeful future where tech and nature coexist perfectly. Think futuristic cities filled with solar panels, lush greenery integrated into sleek architecture, and an overall utopian feel. What sets Frutiger Eco apart from similar aesthetics like solar punk is its distinct visual style inherited from Frutiger Aero, meaning you'll see lots of glassy surfaces, bubbly graphics, and abstract details. It became especially popular with corporations trying to push eco-friendly branding, giving rise to its own subgenre called renewable corporate futurism. Imagine office spaces that look super futuristic but also very green and inviting. Though the aesthetic started losing mainstream appeal around 2017 due to the rise of flat design, Frutiger Eco is still going strong in some niche areas, especially cleaning product logos for whatever reason. Visually, it emphasizes nature and sustainability through images of Earth, solar panels, and abundant plant life, all presented in a polished, optimistic, and futuristic style. Frutiger Eco vibes also appear prominently in media like in movies WALL-E, Spirited Away, and Meet the Robinsons, and in games like Super Mario Sunshine and City Skylines Green Cities DLC. Even today, Pinterest boards and YouTube compilations still keep this pretty thriving in like niche communities. Vaporwave. Vaporwave is an aesthetic and a music genre that popped up online around 2011, evolving from the hypnagogic pop scene. It blends nostalgia with surreal, dreamy vibes, taking heavy inspiration from the pop culture of the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s. The music usually involves samples from old school pop, smooth jazz, and musak, slowed down or chopped to give it a distorted, trippy feel. Visually, Vaporwave pulls from Memphis design, Y2K futurism, and recently even Frutiger aero aesthetics, creating a colorful, glitchy, and often ironic atmosphere. The visuals in Vaporwave typically feature elements like classical sculptures, early computer graphics, malls, cityscapes, anime, vintage consumer brands, think like Windows 95, Pepsi, Fiji Water, and tons of pinks, teals, and neon colors. Japanese text is super common, partly as a nod to Japan's major economic influence in the late 20th century. Also, there's a significant use of glitches, altered reality, and surreal or liminal imagery, adding to the overall nostalgic yet unsettling vibe. At its core, Vaporwave is often interpreted as a commentary on capitalism and consumerism, though others enjoy it purely for its aesthetics and nostalgia. The genre became popular through platforms like Bandcamp, Tumblr, and YouTube, leading to a really vibrant community, with a lot of subgenres like future funk, mall-soft, echo jams, and Simpson wave. One important distinction between Vaporwave and synthwave: while both have retro vibes, synthwave celebrates the energetic, neon-soaked aesthetic of the 1980s, whereas Vaporwave is slower, more introspective, and ironic, with also broader cultural references. In the media, Vaporwave influences are evident in films like Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse and series like Dan Bell's Dead Mall series. It's also big in indie video games like Broken Reality and Mall Quest, which fully immerse players in Vaporwave's unique style. 2020 TikTok. 2020 TikTok is a nostalgic internet aesthetic referring to the distinct trends, visuals, and cultural shifts that defined TikTok during the early COVID-19 pandemic, roughly from 2020 to 2022. This era felt unique because lockdowns had everyone at home scrolling endlessly, fostering an explosion of niche subcultures, activism, aesthetics, and even drama, all tightly packed into bite-sized video formats. The aesthetic divides into several subcategories like straight TikTok, think Charli D'Amelio dances and mainstream trends; alt TikTok, more niche, embracing indie music, anime, activism, and colorful alt fashion; and deep TikTok, the surreal, bizarre corner filled with unsettling edits, distorted faces, and cursed humor reminiscent of older internet weirdness. Key aesthetics from this era include Indie Kid, characterized by bright, saturated edits and skater fashion and nostalgic references to early 2000s pop culture; E-girl/E-boy, an edgy subculture heavily inspired by anime, K-pop, and alternative music, marked by colorful hair, chains, and winged eyeliner; and Scenecore, a modern revival of mid-2000s scene fashion blended with hyperpop, anime visuals, and an embrace of cringe culture, which I'm a big fan of. Just wait till we get to the hyperpop shit. Glitchcore was another standout, defined by maximalist visual chaos like heavy saturation, pixelation, flashing colors, and anime edits that often bordered on sensory overload. Glitter anime profile pictures became iconic symbols of this time, combining anime screenshots with sparkling edits. Trends like over-accessorized cosplay or decora cosplay emerged too, where fans overloaded their costumes with excessive accessories, turning the cosplay into an expression of maximalist creativity rather than strict accuracy. Feralcore celebrated chaotic energy with memes about going feral, worms on strings, frogs, and possums, tied heavily to LGBTQ+ themes and self-acceptance. Music was a massive driving force, with hyperpop artists like 100 gecs and Charli XCX exploding in popularity. Which, by the way, just a little fun fact about my channel: if you go back, I have an old ass video on my channel, a 5-minute video about 100 gecs and why they're so good. I used to try a bunch of different shit, guys. Anyway, TikTok also popularized specific songs like Doja Cat's Say So, Mother Mother's Hayloft, and Mitski's Washing Machine Heart, creating instant recognition through these short clips. Slang from this era remains iconic. Phrases like "it's the blank for me," vibe check, and emojis like capturing the playful, sarcastic, or ironic tone of Gen Z internet culture. Drink trends like the Dalgona coffee, I don't remember that one, guys, like the whipped coffee phenomenon, or the battery acid concoction, which is Monster Energy mixed with Gatorade and sour candy. I don't remember those, guys. On a socio-political level, TikTok during 2020 was deeply marked by activism. The Black Lives Matter movement gained enormous traction on the platform, turning TikTok into a hub for political discourse and social awareness. Cancel culture also peaked, stirring intense debate around accountability and justice. Despite its controversies, from intense online drama and discourse communities to debates over performative activism and cultural appropriation, 2020 TikTok remains nostalgically remembered. Cottagecore. Cottagecore is an internet aesthetic built around a soft, dreamy version of rural life. It's inspired by how people imagine the countryside used to be. Before technology, before cities got huge, when life was supposedly slower, simpler, and more connected to nature. It's focused on things like baking, gardening, sewing, reading, foraging, and spending quiet time in cozy spaces. The aesthetic is all about comfort, care, and living gently. It became really popular on TikTok and Instagram, but it actually started gaining traction on Tumblr, especially in queer spaces. Cottagecore pulls a lot from older time periods, especially the 1800s, when art and literature started romanticizing the countryside. You'll also see influence from vintage kids' books like Peter Rabbit or The Secret Garden, and fantasy stories like Lord of the Rings that mix nature with soft magic and little homes in the hills. Visually, it's tied to florals, soft lighting, handmade clothes, and warm, earthy colors. There's a big focus on small comforts like quilts, teacups, bread dough rising on a windowsill. Animals, mushrooms, gardens, and cottages, obviously, are everywhere. During the early days of the COVID-19 pandemic, Cottagecore completely blew up online. People were stuck at home, so they started baking, crafting, and playing games like Animal Crossing, which fit the vibe perfectly. There was also a lot of yearning content going around, like soft emotional posts about wanting a peaceful life, wanting love, wanting to live in a cabin with someone and just exist. This especially resonated with a lot of LGBTQ+ people who saw Cottagecore as an alternative to traditional life paths and a space to imagine new ways of living and loving. There's also a political side to Cottagecore, even if it's not always obvious. On one hand, it's tied to ideas like sustainability, anti-capitalism, queer joy, and mental health care. On the other, it's also been used by tradwives and right-wing users who romanticize traditional gender roles and old-fashioned family values. Some people have criticized Cottagecore for idealizing a type of rural life that never really existed, or only existed for like privileged people. It can also ignore how hard and grueling farm work actually is, and how colonial and Eurocentric the aesthetic can get when it only shows white people in perfect little English cottages. Drain! Guys, my favorite, okay? You guys have no idea how long I've been wanting to talk about this shit. If you watch the channel or if you're in my Discord, you know I'm a fucking Blade stan. I've wanted to do the Drain Gang Iceberg for so long, but I just don't think it'll get any views. But this is my one chance to talk about my one true passion, okay? I have Blade tapestries everywhere. My graduation cap is Blade themed. Okay, I just gotta get into this and stop ranting. Okay, back to the script. Drain is more than just a music collective or a look. It is a whole language, one you feel more than you explain. At the center of it all is Blade and the rest of the Drain Gang collective, which we'll get into, and if you know, you know. It's not just about the songs, though the songs are everything. It's about how you see the world differently after you've really listened. It's about the quiet in-between moments, the melancholy dressed in chrome, the way a distorted synth or an offbeat hook can hit harder than any big-budget production. Drain's about beauty through decay, peace and digital overload, loss and gain, energy is eternal. The core of the aesthetic comes from the group Drain Gang, Blade, Echo 2K, Tyboy Digital, and White Armor. But Drain didn't stay in music. It spilled out into fashion, visuals, art, and an entire subculture. It's not about mimicking trends, it's about slowing things down, leaning into softness, vulnerability, experimentation. It's post-irony, post-cool. It's about being real in a world that's already gone off-script. Online, the community started around 4chan's FA and MU boards, then scattered to Reddit and Tumblr and TikTok. At first, it was treated like a meme, like Sad Boy 2.0 2.0, but that was never the whole picture. For a lot of us, Drain became something serious. Not because we're trying to look cool, but because it gave us a language to the things we didn't know how to say. Fashion in Drain isn't one thing. It can look like a True Religion ad from 2004, or a futuristic angel in an all-white puffer. Blade's style in particular is iconic. From 2014, we had the baggy jeans and oversized hoodies, layered mesh, all this stuff. And then recently, in the last few years, we've been getting like delicate scarves and I mean, you can see it on screen, like look at this shit. It's awesome. He switches between post-apocalyptic streetwear and soft, hyper-feminine silhouettes with this ghostly, celestial glow. Echo 2K's androgyny takes it even further. He makes vulnerability look like armor. Drain fashion pulls from Y2K, 90s hip-hop, goth, clubwear, and cyberfuturism. But it always loops back into something ethereal, and it's personal. A good fit pick isn't just about the outfit, it's the edit, the lighting, the energy, it's the feeling. The visuals are instantly recognizable. Blade and Echo 2K both designed their own album art, and the DIY style is half the point. Chrome filters, sparkles, grainy overlays, clashing fonts, clip art frames, MS Paint scribbles, biblical imagery rendered in pixelated GIFs, and a lot of these you're seeing on screen I have on my wall right now, like I'm like looking at it, dude. There's this balance between trashy and holy, soft and sharp. It's like someone dragged a zip file of heaven through a virus scanner and posted the result to Tumblr at 3 a.m. The music videos match. Flashing lights, lo-fi glitch effects, low-res cameras, abrupt transitions. Even when the quality is rough, the vision is intact. That's the point. It's not supposed to be clean, it's supposed to be alive. Musically, Drain Gang helped shape the sad rap, cloud rap, and hyperpop adjacent spaces we see now. They collaborated with Working on Dying and Goth Money early on, and the influence is everywhere. Reptilian Club Boys, Black Cray, Rip Squad. They all carry pieces of the same energy. The production leans on dreamy pads, muddy trap beats, angelic auto-tuned vocals, and off-kilter rhythms that feel like they're floating underwater. It's music that makes you feel weightless, or heartbroken, or both. Drain music sounds like crying in a nightclub and ascending at the same time while you're like high on Molly and getting head. At least that's how I see it, at least. And you're like doing like a money spread too. Dreamcore is a fan-driven evolution. It's glittery, loud, clashing, chaotic. Think hyper-feminine Y2K overload. Sanrio meets cyber hellscape. It doesn't always sound like Drain Gang, but it feels like it. You'll see anime girls edited in Chrome, low-res, Winx Club, GIFs layered with sad rap lyrics. It branches into things like Cyber Fairy, which is delicate and pink and otherworldly, and Cyber Grunge, which is dark and messy and glitchy. The common thread is a kind of digital emotion, beauty and noise blurred together. And that was the end of Layer 1, guys. This iceberg I made myself. I chose the ones that I think are the most important. That was Layer 1, and let's get into Layer 2 now. 2010s internet. The 2010s internet aesthetic is basically what it felt like to grow up online during that weird in-between era. Not quite the chaotic old web of the 2000s, but definitely before everything became super polished and ad-driven like it is now. It captures the mood of 2010 to around 2014 when meme culture exploded, social media still felt experimental, and most people were using YouTube for fun, not for a brand. Aesthetic-wise, it's a mix of low-res memes, rage comics, rainbow text, pixel art, MS Paint edits, and flashing GIFs. It was loud, messy, and kind of cringe in hindsight, but that's what makes it so nostalgic now. A lot of people remember it through Flash animations, Club Penguin, early Minecraft YouTubers, creepypastas, AMVs, and that specific kind of epic humor that spammed air horns and thought Snoop Dogg edits were like the peak of comedy. What makes this aesthetic hit so hard is that it represents a version of the internet that wasn't fully commercial yet. People were anonymous, and you'd stumble into forums or comment sections full of the wildest inside jokes. Kids would make tribute videos to Sonic characters using Windows Movie Maker and dubstep tracks from Newgrounds. Memes like Trollface or Neon Cat weren't ironic, they were everywhere and completely sincere, and Trollface is still like my favorite meme ever. Flash games ruled sites like Newgrounds and Armor Games. YouTube Poop, Brony, Culture, MLG Edits, which we'll get to later, and Vocaloid all thrived in the same digital soup, and none of it needed to make sense. It was chaotic, but it was ours. This was also the era where fandoms really started to organize online. Tumblr was at its peak and fandom culture was intense. People made entire identities around shipping, headcanons, and fan art. At the same time, there was this constant overlap with digital horror and weird internet lore. Slenderman, Jeff the Killer, Smile.jpg, these stories were everywhere, especially with kids who spent way too much time on DeviantArt or 4chan's Export. Being a creepypasta kid or an MLG kid or even just a Roblox player back then was like being part of your own little internet tribe. Eventually it all started to fade out. YouTube got stricter, Flash died, TikTok took over, and the overall vibe of the internet just changed. Things got cleaner and more algorithm driven, and a lot of the randomness or rawness disappeared. But people still hold on to this era like a digital childhood. It's why edits that mimic this time with JPEG compression or old memes or bad audio quality and Roblox screaming are still getting made today under tags like mock nostalgia or Y2K-tuber. And yeah, dude, I'm not afraid to admit it, I still watch Sunday sometimes. Like not new Sunday, like 8 years ago Sunday. I don't care, dude. It's nostalgic. Fuck you. Weirdcore. I love Weirdcore. Weirdcore hits different. Out of every aesthetic that's blown up on the internet in the past few years, this one might be the most deeply felt. It's not just a visual style, it's a whole emotional reaction, and if you get it, you get it. Weirdcore lives in that space between dreams and memory, where everything looks kind of familiar but also kind of wrong. It's built on low-res photos, distorted text, lo-fi editing, and glitchy liminal spaces. It's the kind of stuff that looks like it came from an old forum post, a forgotten game demo, or a childhood fever dream that you can't quite place. It's eerie, yes, but not horror. It's more your brain trying to remember something that was never real in the first place. A classic Weirdcore image might be like an old home stairwell paired with floating words like "you were never meant to find this" or "turn around." Sometimes the text is comforting and sometimes it's hostile. Sometimes it's just there, like a strange sign you found in a dream. The aesthetic draws heavily from early web design, lo-fi tech, analog horror, and old school surrealism, but what really defines it is the mood. Confusion, unease, nostalgia, alienation is all in there, but that doesn't mean it's always scary. Weirdcore is personal. What one person sees as haunting, another sees as comforting. For some people, a grainy stairwell with the caption "this way" feels like a nightmare. For others, it's a portal back to simpler times, even if those times didn't technically exist. What's wild is how organic the whole thing is. It doesn't really have a clear starting point or a central creator. I mean, there definitely are some famous creators. Like, I know that everybody knows like Log and Sanford, but Weirdcore just kind of appeared quietly and it spread across Tumblr, YouTube, and Discord like a virus in a dream. The earliest confirmed Weirdcore image showed up around 2016, but there were likely precursors before that. Stuff from early ARGs, Vaporwave, or indie games like You May Nikki and LSD Dream Emulator already had that haunted nostalgia feel. Weirdcore eventually blew up after creators like David Kripp started breaking it down in explainer videos, but even now it feels kind of untraceable. Posts don't have follower counts, images get reposted endlessly, and you can't really tell what's original or what's a remix. Weirdcore's sound is also pretty important. Think distorted ambient music, uncanny loops, and slowed down audio that makes you feel like you're remembering something sideways. I actually use a lot of this kind of music in the background of my videos. Boards of Canada, Omori, Yume Nikki, these kinds of things is really what it is. Soft grunge. Soft grunge, also called pale grunge, is that exact brand of teenage internet sadness you either lived through or are now romanticizing in retrospect. It peaked on Tumblr between 2013 and 2015, defined by its moody black and white edits, sad quotes in Helvetica, cigarette photos, and a vibe that screamed "I'm not like other girls," with a side of Lana Del Rey playing in the background. It wasn't really about being authentically grunge in the 90s sense. This was more like grunge filtered through indie pop fandoms, American Apparel ad campaigns, and sad Tumblr girl energy. Think flower crowns, chokers, the 1975 lyrics over grainy gifs, and crying selfies lit by fairy lights. Visually, soft grunge was half clean girl, half emo revival. You'd scroll past pixelated band posters, glitchy black and white gifs, grid patterns, broken TVs, and a million faceless selfies holding water bottles. People romanticized concrete buildings, Greek statues, cacti, and messy rooms lit by MacBooks. The aesthetic wasn't messy in a punk way, it was curated. carefully sad like a Pinterest board of existential crises. The color palette was mostly monochrome, black, white, gray, with maybe soft blues or greens and sometimes pastel pinks, or purples if you were more on the pale side of soft grunge. Band tees, flannels, black skinny jeans, creepers or Converse, layered chokers, fishnets, pleated skirts. This was the era when girls wore flower crowns and called themselves broken. The look was built from mall brands like Hot Topic and American Apparel, with outfits that were copy-pastable. Black Vans, striped shirt, Tumblr quote, repeat. Hair was dyed or bleached and sometimes pastel, sometimes dark and styled, and space buns, messy pigtails, or micro bangs. Guys, or anyone mask presenting, could rock it too, usually with baggy jeans, beanies, and oversized jackets. Usually. Renewable corporate utopia. Renewable corporate utopia, also often called stock eco-office, solar graphic, or stephicism, is a visual aesthetic that blends corporate branding with environmental optimism. It emerged in the early 2010s right after the decline of Frutiger era and was shaped by growing climate concerns and a push for sustainability. RCU took the soft, hopeful tone of Frutiger Eco with its clean skies, soft gradients, and nature motifs, and applied it to the structure and values of the modern office. Where Frutiger Eco learned abstract, RCU learned practical. RCU images typically feature staged corporate photography, hands holding soil or small plants, employees smiling near solar panels, glassy office buildings with greenery woven in, and teams stacking hands in clean sunlit workplaces. The color palette is bright and sterile, white, sky blue, leaf green, gray, and light orange, and the design often uses rounded, friendly fonts like Railway, Quicksand, or Caviar Dreams. Unlike its predecessor, Frutiger Eco, RCU strips away the dreamy abstract parts and centers its focus on corporate order, human productivity, and clean energy. Solar panels, wind turbines, and recycling icons take the place of glossy gradients. Nature appears as a symbol, often a vector icon or a carefully manicured plant wall, rather than something wild or uncontrolled. RCU was used widely in marketing materials, sustainability campaigns, and educational infographics throughout the 2010s. While it never became a dominant internet aesthetic, it really was everywhere in the background, in airports, on school posters, and corporate sustainability reports, and all that kind of stuff. MS Paint. MS Paint is an internet aesthetic rooted in the raw, clunky charm of Microsoft Paint, the default drawing software bundled into Windows since the 80s. It's not just a visual style, it's a whole digital vibe that calls back to when art on the internet was less about polish and more about creativity with whatever you had and just being goofy. MS Paint art usually features flat colors, solid outlines, pixelated textures, and a kind of clumsy earnestness that's become a style of its own. Like Trollface was made on this, bro. Whether it was a doodle of Sonic, a stick figure comic, or some weird OC in a white void, MS Paint was where a lot of it started for a generation of online artists. This aesthetic grew alongside the early internet, where Paint was often the only accessible tool for people to make anything visual. It became a go-to for editing memes, designing web comics, or making weird little slideshows in YouTube's early years, especially paired with Windows Movie Maker. It was everywhere on forums, DeviantArt, early YouTube, and image boards. It wasn't about skill, it was about the vibe, low effort looking, but high effort in spirit. And it never really went away. Even as better tools came around, people still use MS Paint all the time today for nostalgia or humor. Most images here use flat shapes, bright default colors, jagged outlines drawn with a mouse, and the default system fonts, especially Comic Sans or MS Sans Serif. White backgrounds are common, and many drawings are made to look funny, awkward, or low-res on purpose. Some people paste in random stock images or game sprites alongside hand-drawn figures, creating a kind of collage effect. It overlaps a lot with meme culture and DIY webcomics, etc. This aesthetic gave rise to a ton of different styles and subgenres, like Okaki, the Japanese forum-based version, silly-core characters like the TBH creature, or paint-based sprite comics like Tails Gets Trolled. It also influenced games and animation, especially ones that embraced janky, crude graphics for humor or storytelling. Titles like Booby Tales, Space Funeral, Pizza Tower, and web series like Greenie Phantom or Neon Neko Sugar Girls all draw from that same paint-fueled energy. 3. Naturecore. Naturecore is an aesthetic all about connecting to the natural world. Animals, forests, flowers, plants, and all the quiet magic of being outdoors. It's like stepping into a peaceful moment where the only sounds are wind in the trees, birds chirping, or the distant sound of water flowing. It romanticizes nature not just as scenery but as a way of life, slower, gentler, and deeply in tune with the environment. The aesthetic sits somewhere between Cottagecore and Earthcore, but what set Naturecore apart is its focus on the wilderness and the raw beauty of untamed landscapes. It's not always soft or delicate, there's space here for darker, wilder sides of nature too. Foggy woods, predator-prey tension, poisonous plants, and the quiet loneliness of faraway places. It captures everything from a sun-dappled trail to the eerie stillness of a misty forest right before it rains. Visually, Naturecore shows a lot of forests, mountains, lakes, moss, wildflowers, and fog. It loves overhead shots of roads winding through trees, quiet hiking paths, snow-dusted trees, and cabins tucked away in the woods. Photography by artists like Eberhard Gross-Gattiger, especially his moody taiga landscapes, feel like the gold standard here. Aesthetically, Naturecore can be comforting, melancholic, or a little bit uncanny, depending on the tone of the imagery. Fashion usually reflects practicality with a romantic twist. Long skirts, overalls, sweaters, earth-toned prints, nature-themed jewelry, and soft textures. Clothes often look like something you'd wear while exploring a field or reading under a tree. Sustainability and secondhand items are common, and accessories like flower crowns or woven hats keep things whimsical. Naturecore also encourages activities like pressing flowers, picking berries, photographing leaves, baking bread, journaling in the woods, or taking care of plants and animals. And it also branches off into other smaller subgenres like Bloomcore, which is centered on flowers, Dark Naturecore, which is the more shadowy, almost gothic side of nature, Mushroomcore, which, can you guess what that one focuses on? Mosscore, and Gloomcore, which favors mist, overcast skies, and gray forests. Digital horror. Digital horror is a subgenre of horror that blends creepypasta storytelling, screen-based paranoia, and a deep sense of internet-era nostalgia. It exists right at the intersection of eerie YouTube series, glitchy old websites, low-effort indie games, and unsettling lost media. Think 2000s desktop vibes, Bandicam watermarks, Comic Sans warnings, and footage that looks like it came off a half-corrupted USB from 2009. It takes the logic of analog horror but brings it forward into the world of webcams, flash games, system crashes, and broken.exe files. At its core, digital horror thrives off discomfort. There's no ghost peeking from the closet, but your computer feels wrong. It uses low-res visuals, dated software interfaces, and deliberately awkward editing to simulate a time when the internet was still mysterious and a little unsafe. It's Lovecraftian dread through the lens of a 480p screen recording. And while there's a heavy overlap with ARGs and analog horror, digital horror is its own thing. Less focused on analog signals or VHS distortion and more rooted in digitized fear. Visually, digital horror doesn't follow strict rules, but a few elements are consistent. Screen capture, footage, outdated operating system, stock audio, old school YouTube video formats, and dead links. Think clunky 2000s interfaces, flash animations, creepy .swf files, and unsettling mascot characters from forgotten educational games. Comic Sans and Windows Movie Maker edits are everywhere. Nostalgia plays a huge role, but it's not comforting. It's the eerie, haunted kind. There's a ton of series and creators that have defined the space. Petscop, Chess Kids Archive, Dad Feels, Mystifying Oracle, and even the Mandela Catalog to a degree. Some are layered ARGs, others just drop cursed videos and leave. Names like Salad Fingers, Poppy, Poochie and Pansy, and Don't Hug Me I'm Scared blur the line between parody and genuine unease. Even channels like Pilot Red Sun and Vibing Leaf mix surrealism with soft horror in ways that fit perfectly within the genre. Digital horror also bleeds into games. Baldi's Basics, Kanito Pet, Shipwreck 64, and MyHouse.wad use low-poly mascots, corrupted data, and meta-storytelling to build dread. Also, Doki Doki Literature Club. Let's not forget. These games usually play like haunted memories, something that feels familiar but is twisted just enough to trigger discomfort. It also appears in films, especially movies that use screens or digital spaces as a setting, like Unfriended, Searching, Creep, and even the Blair Witch Project retroactively captured this vibe. You'll find a similar aesthetic in music too, with artists like Miu, C418, and Kevin MacLeod, whose royalty-free tracks unintentionally became the background music of thousands of eerie internet videos. Lastly, digital horror is often misunderstood. It's not just low-res analog horror or an ARG with puzzles. While it shares themes, it's defined by its digital platform. It's born of the early YouTube era of forgotten flash animations, janky mascots, creepy save files, and lo-fi screen terror. It makes you feel like you found something you shouldn't have, buried deep in the web, and somehow it knows you're watching. Dark academia. Dark academia is an internet-born aesthetic obsessed with the romanticized, mysterious side of learning. Think dead poets, crumbling universities, murdery friend groups, and writing love letters in ink. It started bubbling on Tumblr around 2015, but it really took off in the late 2010s and exploded on TikTok by 2020. The look and feel of the aesthetic pulls hard from 19th century upper-class Europe, American prep schools, Gothic revival, and the kind of schools that teach Latin, rhetoric, and the classics because they can, not because it's useful. But dark academia isn't just about aesthetics. It's a lifestyle performance. Fans, usually called dark academics, craft identities around this whole intellectually tortured scholar archetype. Writing in candlelight, wearing oversized coats, romanticizing burnout and unspoken gay tension in boarding schools, and yearning for emotional chaos hidden in ivy-covered walls. There's this whole theatrical longing for something lost, be it culture, intimacy, or sanity. The aesthetic is big on being pretentious on purpose. Being a little bit unbearable is part of the appeal. Grand statements like, "I want to die surrounded by books in a haunted library" are normal. It takes inspiration from The Secret History, Dead Poet Society, and Kill Your Darlings, media where highly literate, morally gray students spiral into obsession, betrayal, and sometimes murder. Basically, it's smart people doing dumb, beautiful, tragic shit. The look is full of autumn palettes, tweed blazers, Oxford shoes, long wool coats, turtlenecks, and cigarette smoke. Everything is dimly lit like you're studying inside a Caravaggio painting. The vibe is moody, melancholic, and a little dangerous. You're either translating Latin on a rainy day or hiding a body in the woods. There's no in between. Online, it lives through mood boards, character aesthetics, what to wear if you were a cursed art student, and playlists like you're writing your thesis while your lover flees across Europe with your best friend. TikTok made it trendier and Instagram polished it, but Tumblr is where the soul of the aesthetic lives. Emotional, theatrical, and full of yearning and quotes from 18th century poets no one's actually read. Philosophically, it glorifies learning for learning's sake. The point isn't job security, it's the romance of academia. Studying late into the night, obsessing over a Greek tragedy, making your life feel like a novel. There's an Apollonian Dionysian tension between order and madness, reason and passion that runs deep in the aesthetic. Beauty and decay always coexist. Well, it sounds like I'm talking about Dreamcore again, guys. Who gets the reference? Angelcore. Angelcore is an internet aesthetic centered around the idea of angelic beauty and softness. It draws a lot of its visuals from Rococo art. Think old paintings of cherubs, fluffy clouds, soft lighting, delicate wings, flower crowns, and glowing halos. It's the exact opposite of Deathcore, and it often feels light, peaceful, dreamy, and a little nostalgic. The aesthetic is rooted in the way angels have been represented in various mythologies and religions, like Christianity, Judaism, Greek mythology, New Age, etc. But it isn't religious. Instead, it reinterprets those angelic symbols through a fashion and design lens, like lace, silk, sheer fabrics, and flowing gowns, often styled with feathers or ballet flats. It's like dressing how you imagine a gentle glowing angel would, but then making it Instagram or Pinterest ready. Angelcore also leans into themes of ethereality and escapism. The whole vibe is unearthly beauty, stillness, and light, but it's not all soft and innocent. Angelcore splits off into a few subgenres, each adding a different twist. So Cherubcore is like Angelcore's baby sister, and it focuses on the sweetness and innocence of Pruti, which are those little baby angels in Renaissance and Rococo art. It overlaps with Babycore and Lovecore, and it features a lot of pinks, hearts, candy, and soft childlike visuals. Basically, it's like shit you'd see in your grandma's fucking house, like paintings in your grandma's house. Fallen Angel, also called Goth Angelcore or Dark Angelcore, takes the same visual themes and flips them darker. Black wings, grief, rebellion, religious trauma, and the feeling of having fallen from grace are central here. It's more dramatic, moody, and sometimes critical of organized religion. And then we have biblical angel, which is for those fascinated by the terrifying, eldritch beings in the Bible, like described in scripture. Wheels of fire, eyes covering wings, and glowing energy forms. It's less cute and more uncanny, leaning into the religious horror and surrealism. These communities often create angel art that explores fear, truth, and divinity in its rawest, most inhuman form. And then finally, the music here leans ambient, classical, baroque pop, or moody indie, like Nicole Dollenganger, which fucking love her. Dreamcore, another one of my channel's staples if you go through my channel. Dreamcore is a surrealist aesthetic that pulls from the strange, nostalgic, and sometimes eerie feeling of dreams, daydreams, and even nightmares. It's closely related to Weirdcore, but where Weirdcore leans into discomfort and unease, Dreamcore is softer and more mysterious, like the part of a dream where you're wandering through endless hallways or floating through a landscape that doesn't obey the laws of physics. It evokes emotions like anemoia, which is nostalgia for a time you've never lived, gentle confusion, and a longing for something just out of reach. It thrives on emotional ambiguity, memory glitches, and dream logic. Dreamcore visuals often blend liminal spaces, empty school hallways, hotel lobbies, and suburban streets at twilight with vibrant or pastel colors and surreal touches. Characters in Dreamcore are usually odd but endearing, like human or animal bodies with things like TVs, CRT monitors, or eyeballs for heads. I wonder if I like Dreamcore. I wonder if you can tell by looking at my profile picture. These characters often feel like figments from a dream or forgotten memory, not scary but a little off. You'll also see recurring dreamlike elements like clouds, floating buildings, rainbows, bubbles, sparkles, or random pop-up windows from old computer interfaces. Often cryptic text is overlaid on the image, written in basic fonts like Arial or Times New Roman, and the words themselves feel like bits of overheard conversation or an internal monologue from someone just waking up. The community around Dreamcore started to take shape in the late 2010s and early 2020s, especially on TikTok and YouTube. Videos using this style became popular, often set to ambient music, nostalgic sound bites, or voiceovers that feel like they're whispering a forgotten truth. Some TikToks use characters with object heads or stitched together digital features moving through dreamy animated worlds. There's a heavy focus on mood, with the vibe often being wistful, surreal, and emotionally abstract. In terms of media, a lot of Dreamcore fans gravitate towards video games like LSD Dream Emulator, Yume Nikki, and Omori, again, all of which I use like those OSTs for my background footage, like my background music in these videos, which all use non-linear storytelling, memory loops, or dreamy visuals. And then musically, Dreamcore tends to embrace ambient, experimental, or nostalgic sounds. Again, artists like Boards of Canada, The Caretaker, Beba Doobie, and Blood Orange create tracks that feel dreamy, hazy, or emotionally distant. You'll also find dream pop, glitchy ambient noise, lo-fi, and soft electronic tracks that match the tone. Community-wise, Dreamcore is mostly online. It thrives on TikTok, Tumblr, and Discord, where fans share edits, write lore for characters, and reflect on the way certain places, sounds, or visuals feel familiar but impossible to place. There's a lot of crossover with other aesthetics like Kidcore, Traumacore, and Liminal core, but Dreamcore stands out for the emotional, gentleness, I guess. Ethereal. Ethereal is an aesthetic built around the sensation of being light, delicate, and almost otherworldly, like something that floats above the mundane. It's often linked with the dreamy innocence of Disney princess films, Barbie fairy tales, and fantasy worlds that lean into their romanticism without irony. The core feeling of Ethereal is warmth, softness, and a gentle sense of wonder. Everything feels precious, pure, and suspended in a fairy tale moment. Think of glinting fairy wings, soft garden breezes, ballrooms soaked in candlelight, and the kind of true love that lives in storybooks. Visually, Ethereal uses a palette of soft whites, pastels, and natural light, often featuring lace, angelic imagery, flowing fabrics, and delicate materials like mesh and stuff like that. Nature plays a big role beautiful like meadows, lily ponds, forests, and like gardens and shit. But there's also a touch of royalty and timeless elegance, like castles, chandeliers, and delicate vintage jewelry. Like I said, Princess movies earlier, like think like Beauty and the Beast type shit. And then when it comes to media, ethereal stories often exist in a timeless past. Like Pride and Prejudice, Anne of Green Gables, and The Secret Garden capture the mood, as do classic princess films like Sleeping Beauty, Beauty and the Beast, like I said, and nearly every Barbie fairy tale from the early 2000s. Even like Maleficent and Cinderella are also key examples, and ballet. MLG, short for Major League Gaming, started off as a legitimate esports organization but quickly became a full-blown meme aesthetic that dominated internet humor between 2013 and 2017. It's known for its chaotic, hyper-saturated style of video editing, basically the internet's version of a teenage boy's energy drink-fueled fever dream. Think of a Call of Duty kill cam, but it explodes into pixel sunglasses, air horns, and screaming sound effects with Doritos and Mountain Dew and dubstep. That's MLG. The original idea was to parody professional gaming montages, exaggerating everything to the point of absurdity, and then layering in as many memes as humanly possible. I'm sure you've seen this before, like it's a sensory overload. You're gonna see like Doge, Pepe the Frog, Sanic, obnoxious hit marker sounds, Illuminati triangles, a lot of rainbow filters, floating pixelated blunts, screaming eagles, and phrases like 420 no scope. And also I want to say that, by the way, this aesthetic is like, I think it's not even on the wiki anymore. Like I wrote the script based on the aesthetics wiki, and I'm pretty sure it's not even on the wiki anymore because it was like a joke thing, but fuck it, dude. This is what I grew up with, bro. The clothes of MLG looked like what a 12-year-old gamer in 2014 thought drip meant. Chaotic, meme-soaked, and entirely self-aware. MLG eventually faded around 2017, but it left a massive legacy in meme culture. It's considered part of the dank meme era, bringing older YouTube humor with what would eventually become surreal memes and deep-fried memes of the early 2020s. In fact, many Zoomers found their way back to MLG in recent years for nostalgia or to reappreciate its chaotic colorfulness. Like me, I'm one of those. And that was layer 2, guys. This iceberg is so fucking long. I'm gonna try to speed it up. I don't want this video to be like 3 hours, because that was just 2 layers. But I did make this iceberg myself, and it is only 4 layers, which means that we're halfway through the entries, but these last ones are a bit more obscure and probably have less to talk about, so don't worry, it's not gonna be too much longer. But who am I kidding? You can fucking see how much video is left. I don't fucking know how much video is left. Probably a lot less than half. I don't know. After Hours. After Hours is an aesthetic built around the quiet, melancholic beauty of places that are supposed to be full of people, except they're not. Think an empty street lit only by flickering street lamps, a school hallway at night, or a 24/7 diner where nobody's there. That kind of eerie peace. The feeling behind it is called kinopsia, which is that weird nostalgic and sadness you get from seeing a place drained of life. Some people find it unsettling, but After Hours leans more into the tranquility of it all. It's not horror, it's more about silence, memory, and feeling like you're the last person awake. That's why you'll see it tied to graveyard shift vibes, long night walks, quiet phone calls under street lights, or sitting in your car in an empty parking lot. Visually, it does overlap a lot with liminal spaces, but instead of discomfort, it evokes a more poetic solitude. And then media like Drive, Lost in Translation, Call of the Night, and Blade Runner absolutely nail the mood. Whether it's abandoned places IRL or even things like inactive servers like in Minecraft, for me that's a big one as a little 06 Gen Zer. After Hours is about what's left behind and the strange beauty in that emptiness. Cutecore. Cutecore is like if kawaii culture had a baby with the emo girl Tumblr culture in 2013 and then raised it on TikTok. Originally, it was known for blending cutesy anime characters and Sanrio mascots with dark horror elements, like blood splatters, glitchy edits, and psychological themes. That's when it was started around 2020, thanks to a Tumblr user named VoidChan. But over time, it split into 2 versions. The original cute Gore inspired one, and the newer, more sanitized version people usually call Cutecore now. The current version is more soft pastel, less gore, and super influenced by Western kawaii fashion and TikTok filters. You'll see pink bedrooms filled with plushies, Sanrio items stacked on shelves, and anime girls edited with sparkles and strawberry milk. Music is usually super hyper feminine or cute sounding, think anime openings, soft Vocaloid, or slowed down meme songs. But the aesthetic also gets a lot of criticism. Some people say it waters down Japanese fashion, and others call out how it overlaps with toxic behavior, predatory spaces, or encourages overconsumption through fast fashion. Deatherial. Deatherial is the darker, sadder cousin of the ethereal aesthetic. The name literally comes from smashing death and ethereal together, and that's exactly what it feels like. Hauntingly beautiful, but in a quiet, resigned way. It's all soft lighting in dark places, like sunbeams through fog in a graveyard or mist creeping through a decaying forest. The vibe is fragile and solemn, like finding peace in something already broken. Deatherial leans heavily on symbolism. Flowers growing in ruins, sorrow dressed in elegance, and the beauty of letting go. You'll see a lot of muted colors like gray, old white, faded rose, and black, with visuals that blend fragility and decay. It borrows a bit from goth fashion, flowing fabrics, fills, and romantic silhouettes, but softens it with light and grace. Music tends to be dreamy but sad, like Lana Del Rey, Evanescence, and ethereal dark wave stuff. It overlaps with aesthetics like dark naturalism and romantic goth, but instead of rebellion or rage, Ethereal is quiet, it's reflective, and it's about embracing grief and finding something lovely in the darkness. Doomer. Doomer is basically what happens when you look at the state of the world with climate change, economic collapse, war, AI, all of it, and you go, yeah, we're screwed. It's an internet subculture rooted in pessimism with people who genuinely believe humanity is on a one-way track to disaster. It started in early peak oil forums and got a huge boost on 4chan through the Wojak meme of a chain-smoking depressed guy in a beanie, aka the Doomer. The vibe is always gray and dreary, Soviet apartment blocks, foggy war-torn cities, glitchy VHS filters over old Eastern European buildings, paired with post-punk or slowed-down synthwave music. Emotionally, it's heavy on alienation and existential dread. Doomers don't dress flashy, they don't pretend everything's okay, they sit in that dark, depressive realism and call it what it is. It's been criticized for romanticizing depression, but for many it's a way to process what feels like unavoidable collapse. Sad boys and sad girls. And no, this is not the Young Lean thing, guys, okay? This is not Blade. Sad Boys and Sad Girls came out of Tumblr and SoundCloud in the mid-2010s, and they're all about wearing your feelings on your sleeve. This is all those, cringe, Bart Simpson edits, you know? We're talking late-night posts about heartbreak, loneliness, anxiety, and all overlaid on black and white anime edits or distorted retro cartoon clips. Think Lil Peep, Billie Eilish, and Young Lean, music that sounds like you're crying in your bedroom at 3 a.m. It's a whole culture built around openly being sad, not just as an emotional state, but as an aesthetic and an identity. There's a lot of crossover with emo rap, dark pop, vaporwave, and even glitchy internet nostalgia. Some people see it as romanticizing mental illness, but others find comfort in the shared experience, because it's a community built around vulnerability. Simpson Wave is one of the weird little subgenres that branched off from it, using old Simpsons clips drenched in VHS filters and melancholy music. Nerdcore. Nerdcore is nerds reclaiming coolness through rap. It started as a music genre in the late 90s led by artists like MC Frontlot, and it's all about rapping unapologetically about Star Wars, anime, video games, programming, and D&D. It kinda sucks. I mean, no, it doesn't. I'm not here to judge, but you'll see album covers with pixel art, CRT monitors, or the artist drawn into a video game world. The aesthetic leans into early internet vibes and retro gaming with references to memes, hacking, and anime edits. Later waves of Nerdcore, especially Otacore, leaned heavily into anime culture, turning nostalgic OSTs into trap beats. My god, bro. Fashion-wise, it's like someone mashed together a gamer convention with a rap show. Graphic tees, baggy jeans, snapbacks, and maybe a button-up shirt with a tie over a Pokemon shirt. Traumacore. Traumacore is one of the rawest, most emotionally charged aesthetics on the internet. It's not about looking pretty or trendy, it's about surviving. It uses cute, childlike visuals like Hello Kitty dolls, strawberry cakes, soft pink bedrooms, but overlays them with phrases like, "You ruined me, I'll never be clean," or "Please stop." It's that contrast between innocence and horror that defines Traumacore. It's not just for the aesthetic, it's often used as a kind of visual journaling or art therapy for people who have lived through real trauma, especially childhood trauma. The idea is to take something unspeakable and make it visual, easier to name, easier to hold, and maybe easier to let go of. The aesthetic evolved out of an older Tumblr subculture called Marut, which also mixed horror, trauma, and girlhood, but leaned more into medical horror and vintage grotesque imagery. Trauma took that and softened the visual language, less gore and more emotional. It often overlaps with things like Dreamcore and Weirdcore, but instead of just evoking weirdness or nostalgia, it's rooted in real pain. You'll see a lot of imagery tied to religious guilt, bugs, and rot, symbolizing decay, or childhood objects like toys and beds that now feel haunted. There's a lot of debate about whether Traumacore should even be called an aesthetic. For survivors, it's a way to express things they can't say out loud. But when people who haven't lived through pain start posting it because it just looks cool, it crosses into this really weird fetishization. It's not meant to be trendy, it's a cry for help or a way to process real damage, and that's why people are so protective over it. There's also a lot of dark stuff baked into the community. Some edits romanticize things like eating disorders, self-harm, or CSA, and that's where things can get really dangerous, especially when young, vulnerable people fall into these loops. It can create this identity trap where people feel like they can't move beyond the trauma because it's become their whole online presence. Also, cross-tagging is a huge problem, like people slapping #Sanrio on Traumacore edits and exposing kids to that content without warning. It's not okay, and people in the community are actively trying to call it out. At its best, Traumacore is about reclaiming control, saying, yes, this happened to me, but I'm still here and I'm still soft. But at its worst, it can spiral into romanticizing pain or keeping people trapped in their trauma instead of helping them heal. It's powerful, it's controversial, and it's deeply personal, not a trend. It's something sacred to the people who need it. And that was layer 3, guys. Let's get into layer 4 now. Kidcore. Kidcore is an aesthetic built around bright colors, nostalgic imagery, and the energy of childhood, especially from the 1990s and early 2000s. It draws heavily on toys, media, and design from that time, mixing elements from multiple decades, like the bold primary colors of the 70s and 80s and the cartoon culture of the early internet era. While it shares some surface-level similarities with Babycore, Kidcore is more active, bright, and focused on the energy of youth rather than the softness of infancy. It often features imagery of stuffed animals like Beanie Babies, Furbies, and Webkins. That's what I grew up on, guys. I grew up on the Webkins. Yeah, I bet you didn't think that Poi grew up on the Webkins, but I did. I had a lot, so. It also features childhood snacks and fast food, rainbow color palettes, and retro children's media like Lisa Frank designs, Tamagotchi pets, and classic cartoons. It's commonly expressed through colorful room decor, fashion with layered accessories, and playful personal style. There's also a strong link to nostalgic internet aesthetics like early YouTube culture or cartoon-style websites. Femcel weeaboo. Femcel weeaboo is a deeply specific internet subculture blending anime obsession with self-aware isolation, mental health struggles, and a strong online presence. It's associated with girls who feel disconnected from real-life social norms and find identity in fictional characters, psychological horror media, and late-night internet culture. Visually, the aesthetic is messy and emotional, with harsh lighting, 2000s anime art, blue-tinted selfies, Sanrio edits, and art styles influenced by Lovecore and Eroguro. It draws heavily from anime like Serial Experiments, Lane, Neon Genesis Evangelion, and Watamote, where characters are emotionally unstable or socially isolated. The persona is often tied to being chronically online, creating content around loneliness, trauma, and niche internet humor. Music often includes indie, breakcore, and dark pop like Lana Del Rey, The Smiths, and Mitski. It's also closely connected to concepts like NEET life, which stands for not in education, employment, or training, online self-expression, and identity through fictional characters. The aesthetic is controversial. Some argue it glamorizes mental illness and trauma, while others see it as a valid outlet for marginalized girls coping through fictional identification. Over time, the term femcel has drifted from its original meaning and now mostly defines that vibe. Lonely, unfiltered, mentally messy, and online 24/7. Gore web. Gore web is a hyper-distorted, horror-centric internet aesthetic rooted in digital decay and early 2000s web culture. It blends low-resolution visuals, fake gore, and glitch art with influences from creepypasta, weirdcore, and digital horror media. It's heavily inspired by crusty, deep-fried imagery, like distorted screenshots, corrupted corrupted VHS frames or broken websites, and often features unsettling visuals like blood, malformed figures, and pixelated horror edits. Gore web is sometimes associated with artists and online creators who use the aesthetic for music promotion or experimental visual projects, like Ken Carson, Nana825763. Their work often pulls from web horror, body horror, and absurdist fear-based imagery. Gore web visuals feel aggressive, loud, and chaotic. And while it's similar to digital horror and weirdcore, Gore web is much more violent in tone and emphasizes artificial gore and sensory overload. Exspiritualism. Exspiritualism is a loosely defined internet outsider art movement focused on experimental digital collage. It combines three main ideas: spirituality, old web aesthetics, and global cultural elements into a constantly evolving style. The term was popularized by Instagram user Third World Elite, but the actual aesthetic grew organically across platforms like Instagram, Discord, and YouTube. Unlike more rigid aesthetics, Exspiritualism thrives on uniqueness and experimentation. It borrows from early internet visuals like clunky web graphics and glitch effects, but adds layers of esotericism, multicultural imagery, and surreal digital editing. TikTok versions often recycle familiar motifs like distorted faces or glowing spiritual symbols, but deeper pockets of the community focus more on artistic individuality. Exspiritualism is often confused with terms like Yabujancore or curse web, but those are names attached to specific artists, not the movement as a whole. Notable artists like Yabujin, Taconiel, and Curse Web helped push the style forward, but they didn't invent it. Frutiger Aurora. Frutiger Aurora is a visually soothing substyle of the broader Frutiger Arrow aesthetic centered around auroras and light effects. It emerged in the early 2000s as part of the Y2K futurism wave and was made famous through wallpapers in Mac OS X and the Windows Arrow interface seen in Vista and Windows 7. While Frutiger Arrow leaned into glossy, bubbly, and tech-forward visuals, Frutiger Aurora narrowed its focus to the calm, celestial glow of light gradients and bokeh effects. These designs use color schemes that mimic real-life auroras, like soft blues, greens, and purples, and feature smooth, fluid motion or patterns that suggest peaceful movement. The aesthetic gives off a futuristic but natural vibe. It faded after 2015 as flat design became popular, but it still holds nostalgic value. Lovecore. Lovecore is an aesthetic centered around the feeling and symbolism of romantic love. It draws inspiration from Valentine's Day visuals emphasizing hearts, flowers, chocolates, and other traditional values of affection. It's a soft, dreamy aesthetic that avoids explicit or adult themes, focusing more on the innocence and sweetness of infatuation and emotional closeness. Lovecore includes both real and imagined forms of love, ranging from crushes and early relationships to romantic daydreams, and it appeals just as much to those who are single as it does to those in relationships. Visually, it uses a lot of red, pink, and white alongside vintage Valentine's Day cards, blushing anime characters, cute animals, and love quotes. Fashion tied to Lovecore often leans into angelic or softy styles with heart motifs and lace and ribbons. Overall, Lovecore is about idealized affectionate love, something sweet, comforting, and timeless. And guys, that was the internet aesthetics iceberg! We did it, boys and girls and ladies and gentlemen. We did it. We finished it. They said it couldn't be done, but we did it. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. This one was fun as hell to make. I haven't gotten to talk about Weirdcore in this channel in so long, and I fucking love it. And all these aesthetics. Well, not all of them, you know, but it was fun to do. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and yeah, have a great day, everyone. Sweet dreams. Good night.